So today we're going to talk about Zales and the Jewish culture in Wichita Falls. And if you want to learn all about some great history in Wichita Falls, stay tuned because we're getting started right now. So welcome back to another episode of Your Wichita Falls. I'm Debbie Dobbins, I'm your host. And if you know anything about this channel or you want to get to know more about Wichita Falls, please subscribe to our channel, ring that bell, you'll be notified every time we upload a new video because it's all about Wichita Falls and I love Wichita Falls. And I hope if you check out this channel, you'll love Wichita Falls as much as I do. Today, I wanted to talk about some really great history of Wichita Falls. And I want to start by telling you a great little story because, you know, I'm a real estate agent and I find out things in the weirdest ways. And there was a house that came on for a listing recently. And I had somebody call me from Arizona and say, hey, I want to check out this house. Well, this house was amazing to say the least. But here's the really cool part. I found out that it was I don't have this many fingers, number 12 on the historic list of houses in Wichita Falls. So that wasn't enough for me. I had to know why. Why was it? Because it's been restored and it's magnificent. Check out the pictures on another video. But I wanted to talk about some of the things that I found out. And so the house was built by an individual by the name of Zunderwitz. Now, let's talk about that though. This individual was one of the first Jewish people to settle in Wichita Falls. So I want to tell you about the individuals that built this house. They were actually some of the first Jewish people to settle in Wichita Falls. And their names were Albert and Rebecca Zundelwitz. It's a mouthful. But they came to town in the late 1880s. Hello! They were one of the very first settlers, which is really so awesome to me. I love hearing about how people found Wichita Falls because I've done the videos on Kemp and Kell and all of that, but they came in the late 1880s to open a clothing store. Really? Was that a thing back then? Well, yes, it was. They were born in Russia. Albert immigrated to the United States in 1865 and Rebecca followed 4 years later. So imagine this. I just think the picture of it that they immigrated from Russia and how different Wichita Falls was from Russia. They married in 1873 and later lived in Iowa. They lived in Iowa before moving to Wichita Falls, so they got a little acclimation, but Iowa is way different than Wichita Falls. Albert became one of the city's most prominent businessmen. Holy cow. I mean, the thing is that he's not talked about a lot because I hadn't really recognized the name, and you'll find out that there's even more connection than that. But he was this prominent businessman, and he helped to found the City National Bank. Oh my gosh, is that so cool? And by 1910, and I think the City National Bank was the bank of the first bank robbery. I'll have to go back and check my facts, so forgive me if I'm wrong. By 1910, he had retired and was living on his investments. So he did pretty well for himself here. And I'm going to tell you, I say that over and over about Wichita Falls. If you want to be an entrepreneur, this is a great place to do it. But he also owned ranches and some property on the West Texas plains. So he diversified. He bought real estate. Hello, what am I always telling you to do? But Zundelwitz was very civically minded. And this is the thing that I always love about the founders and history of our community. And it still is today. Very civically minded, very philanthropic. So he served as an alderman in the 1890s and he donated $30,000, which back in the the late 1800s and early 1900s, that had to be like $30 million. I mean, with inflation today, seriously, $30,000. And we had to have a bond. Oh my gosh. So he helped build a local public school with that $30,000. And they named this school in his honor. And if you are from here, you've heard of Zundy Elementary. That's where it came from. I did not know that because I'm not from here. And it is so amazing that this person loved his new community so much And he worked, he thrived, and he took $30,000 of his own money to start a school. In 1924, the local newspaper recognized Albert and Rebecca as pioneer residents of Wichita Falls, which they were. And they had lived in the town since its very earliest days, which I think is always so magical, because the people that came here in the very early days, and believe me, we didn't have air conditioning back there, they could have said, heck with this, because you know if you live here at all, it gets a little warm in the summer. But they came, these people came here and they founded this community, and it still thrives to this day. But following the arrival of Albert and Rebecca, a handful of other Jews moved to Wichita Falls in this late 19th century. And this is the thing that I find fascinating, is that I don't think I talk about it on videos much, but I talk about it to people that are coming here. We have a very cosmopolitan feel here because of the people that began our communities, and because of the NATO base, and because of the Air Force Base. Some people can't see it because they're born and raised here and they stay stuck, but there are so many people here that have this open-mindedness that I love so much. So Alex Kahn, another Jewish resident, moved to town around 1890 to work for the Zundelwitzes. Guess what? He later opened his own clothing store in town. This is what I'm talking about. Being an entrepreneur in Wichita Falls has got a huge long history, and you too can be one. But Henry Kahn owned a furniture store in the 1890s, while Max Marcus, another Jewish settler, was a dry goods salesman in Wichita Falls by 1890. And then another gentleman, Jean Leopold, a German native, came to Wichita Falls in 1909 and opened the Loeb Leopold clothing store. So for those of you that have been here for years and years, Loeb Leopold has been around for a while. It didn't close till probably maybe when I was here the first time. But he managed that store for 45 years. This is what I talk about longevity here in Wichita Falls. And Leopold became a beloved figure in town because he was carrying jelly beans in his pockets so he could give them out to children in town. Oh my gosh, that's what's so amazing, is that somebody should start something like that again. Of course, with COVID and all the other stuff, people wouldn't let you give away jelly beans to your children, but it's still a good idea. A big sports fan, he owned a local semi-pro baseball team. So how cool was that? And he led parades and pep rallies for the local high schools and football teams. And, people that came here and started this community really were vested in it. So by 1910, there were only a handful of Jewish-owned stores in Wichita Falls, and the Jewish community was still fairly small. But things would change once oil was discovered, which the whole town changed for that matter. I've done stories about that, what happened about the oil boom and everything else. But when it was discovered here in 1911, this major oil strike transformed Wichita Falls into boomtown. Even though Burke Burnett is true boomtown, the city grew from about 8,000 people in 1910 to over 40,000 a decade later. And we haven't grown that much since, but hey, we're still mighty. But by 1920, the city had 9 oil refineries, 47 factories. I mean, we were just rocking and rolling at that point because of the oil. And Wichita Falls' emergence as an oil center attracted growing numbers of other Jewish members to our city, most of whom opened retail stores. So how cool is that? Louis Pink moved to Wichita Falls from Indianapolis in the 1910s to open the Palace drugstore. How many of you remember that? Several other Jewish families moved to town, and as the ranks of Jewish-owned businesses swelled. So by 1927, an estimated 505 Jewish people lived in Wichita Falls, which back then that was quite a big percentage of the population, because you have to understand it. Of the 40,000 people, a lot of them were oil workers and builders of buildings and homes and stuff. And then this oil boom led to Morris B. Zale. Now, why do you know that name, Zale? Zale's Jewelry. Morris was a jewelry store entrepreneur. He was the son of Libby and Samuel Zalewski, and he was born on September 5th in 1901 in Russia as well. So I haven't found any way to connect those two, but I swear they probably were best buddies. I haven't found articles to that. If you know it, please share in the comments. Zale migrated to the United States in 1908 as a child and fleeing Tsarist Russia. So think about that. All of these guys that came from Russia were fleeing Tsarist Russia. And there's, if you read Nicholas and Alexander, that wasn't a good place to be. But after a brief stay in New York, because Zale landed in New York, his family, eventually settled in Fort Worth. Imagine that. You know how hard it was in 1910 to get from New York to Fort Worth? That was a trip. But because of financial difficulties, Zale dropped out of school. Yay, no college education, became an entrepreneur, and he only finished 7th grade, but he was introduced to the jewelry business by his uncle, Sam. So Sam Kruger, his uncle, in 1920, Morris managed Kruger Jewelry Store in Burke Burnett. Everything's happening in Burke back then. But before opening his own business in Graham in 1922, Morris Zale had to flee because of the Ku Klux Klan. The Ku Klux Klan in Graham. Crazy! That first store, though, that he rented in Graham was a drugstore, and 2 years he only lasted there because, as I said, the Ku Klux Klan I didn't know they were alive and well in Graham, but apparently they were. But he came to Wichita Falls. He rejoined his uncle in his store in Wichita Falls, Morris Zale did. And he became a partner with his uncle. And it was then called Zale Jewelry. In 1924, this first Zale's jewelry, I say Zale's, it's Zale Jewelry Store at the corner of 8th and Ohio, which you can watch a video on what is there now, Carrot Bar and Bistro, but K-A-R-E-T. And the building is still there, it's still historic, it's still magical. And in 1925, Morris married Edna, and he and his brother-in-law, Ben, built the business together. Zale broke with a cash-only policy. This is where he made his money, though. People that sold jewelry back there did cash only and in jewelry retailing. And he offered credit to working class customers. So you can imagine back then with the oil boom, and not everybody was making tons of money on the oil boom. They were working class people. They were working in the fields and they were building houses for the rich people. And guess what? They could pay on credit. So Morris allowed them to make payment in installments. That's like the Henry Ford assembly line. What a genius this guy was. So he created some other innovations, an employee profit sharing plan. Holy cow. This guy was marketer, entrepreneur, extraordinaire before the time, because he did mass advertising. He was committed to sales training. So I've taught leadership. Sales training is amazingly important, and most people don't. They just shove you out the door and say, hey, go sell. And he developed a corporate child care facility. Oh my gosh. I'm just like, I wish I could go back in time or have, a lunch date with him, because what a mind. And this guy started in Wichita Falls. So he opened this permanent office in Belgium to buy uncut stones. This was another first for the retail jewelry business. I mean, come on, the guy was just so forward thinking. And during the Great Depression, the company was caught with a large debt, but was able to pay it off over 5 years. So the thing is they just kept focused. He was an entrepreneur. He was determined to succeed. This is what I love about success. So following World War II, massive expansion took place, because you all have heard the stories of when everybody came back, they went back to work and we started making stuff and growing and growing and growing, even here in little tiny Wichita Falls. So after World War II and it started to grow, he started making Zales, the world's largest retail jewelry, right here in Wichita Falls. Morris Zale was known for his philanthropy. Of course he was. He was living in Wichita Falls. He financed an orphanage for young war victims in 1947 in Europe and supported it for 4 decades. He started the Zale Foundation in 1951 to expand his activities, and the foundation supported numerous charities and educational activities. What I think is so important to take away from both of these stories is that there is success here. There is opportunity here. There is vision here. There is just magic here in Wichita Falls. I say it all the time. It is the jewel of Texas. And if you want to start a business, this is the place to come. I promise you. Knowing that when you do make money, this is what I love about making money, period, is that you can help other people. So it isn't about making money, it's about making money to help other people. So how cool is that? Zales, you know, has gone on. There's a history of all of the years making billions and supporting our community. And both of these wonderful people are no longer with us, but they leave a living legacy here in Wichita Falls. So if you want to know more about Wichita Falls, you want to come join me in Wichita Falls, you can schedule a Zoom meeting with me in the first comment section below. And always, if you're interested more, there is a link for a download of a relocation guide, because really, truly, it's a fabulous place. And y'all come back now, you hear?